It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You bet. So let's begin this conversation with one of the most tumultuous things that we've lived through in our lifetime, which was this pandemic. And
Yeah.
it's in a new year now, and there's been so many waves that was created from that time period. What kind of reverberations from living through that are you still feeling into today?
Well, personally, it really stopped my trajectory of kind of just doing, and hoping for a different result than had happened up until that point. And so I just had a chance to stop and look around. And as someone who has really, really struggled with PTSD and mental health because of that, it really gave me a chance to kind of breathe out and go. And at the very same time, I looked around and I just saw mayhem and suffering and just people like that were going through things that I couldn't even imagine. So I think that it is you know, part of my belief system is really rooted in my faith. I'm a Baha'i, and part of that belief is that eventually humanity will unite, that we are already inherently one.
Yeah.
Quantum physics tells us the same thing. We're one.
Yeah.
We might not think that we're one, and our physical bodies and the physical world create an illusion of separation. But the reality is that we are all one, and the individuality of us is our individual consciousness.
Yeah.
But as we kind of teeter toward the edge of no return, I believe that the edge of no return is really this materialistic mindset that we've lived with for who knows how long, that we are separate.
Yeah.
And the thing that will bring us together is the awareness of our inherent unity. All human beings inherently one. And so I think that the pandemic is part of this shaking up, because if we don't need to change, we don't.
Right.
If we're comfortable, we're like, well, I'm comfortable. Let's not change.
Yeah.
The pandemic started shaking us by the roots, saying, no, things are changing.
Yeah.
We are changing. We're shifting this up. And we're seeing now, in my opinion, the continued effects of this upheaval, this worldwide upheaval that is happening in every country,
Yeah.
everywhere
Yeah.
around the world. So,
Yeah. As we discussed leading into this before we got on camera about Canada and the Prime Minister, and there's just this seismic change that's
yeah.
happening even in America as we head towards inauguration. So let's get into the exact marrow of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students. It's career day. One of the kids in the back of the room is curious and is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Well, I would be honest and I would say that, I have some health issues. And so every day I work with those health issues. Now, because we're adults and we're speaking together, I would tell you that I use energy medicine to help myself heal from the after effects of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that to third graders. I
Right.
would just say, I have to work hard to feel good.
Yeah.
And so I do that every day. And I would say, and one of the things that really helps me feel like myself is painting, writing stories, illustrating stories, and doing energy medicine. And I particularly love doing energy medicine at a donkey sanctuary where I volunteer every week, and I go there and I help donkeys who've been abused oftentimes in their previous, lives, from different owners, or they've been neglected. And I get the wonderful honor of going there and helping them get better.
Yeah.
So for me, it's an exciting time because I have my finger in many pots. You know, there's the creativity, and then there's energy medicine, and then there's kind of the running of my business. So it's a lot of different things,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I think at that point I wanted to be a bus driver.
Okay. Cool.
But I remember before that, I was a 6 year old around there. And I remember holding this beautiful illustrated book, a picture book. And I remember kind of clutching it to myself and thinking, oh, if I could just grow up and make beautiful pictures like this.
Yeah.
And I that was such a clear memory. And then later, when there was a time when art was my escape.
Yeah.
But then as the issue that had caused the PTSD started to emerge because it was a buried trauma, so it was like emerging, all of a sudden my arms felt like they were detached from me. So I would sit down to draw and it would be like they were, kind of concrete balloons at the end of my arms, my hands.
Yeah.
So creating became a an impossibility for me.
Yeah.
And it was an incredibly frustrating time, like
Yeah.
just despair, where and even if I could draw something, I would look at it and look so stupid and ugly and ridiculous, and I'd end up ripping it up and throwing it away. And and it took a long time for my hands to kind of reconnect and to be able to start painting and drawing again and being able to express myself visually.
So take me back to your beginnings. What were these seeds that were planted into you to become an illustrator, an artist, a storyteller, an author? How did all of these things get cultivated and evolve into who you are today?
Well, my parents, when I was little, we had moved to Germany. My dad was in the armed forces as a teacher. Uh, so we were living in one of the little army housing things. So everything was cramped.
Yeah.
They were taking an oil painting course, each of, both of my parents. So that in the dining room, in this tiny dining room, they had their easels set up with the painting that they were working on. And when they weren't around, I would grab the brush and help them in
Yeah.
quotes.
Yeah.
And they never found out. But every time they would go to the art store in Germany, and this was a brilliant art store, like just aisles and aisles of just art supplies. They would take me and they would let me pick one art supply.
Wow.
And I remember walking through the aisles kind of going, yes, I am going to get an art supply because I am an artist, and feeling the sense of yes, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I never saw myself as a storyteller until my sister, Michelle Torrey. She's a she's an author. She's written some brilliant books. She wrote a children's story once, and I was like, let me illustrate it. So I illustrated, we turned it in, nobody published it, but I kept bugging her, well, write another one so I can try to illustrate that one. And she was like, oh, all right, all right. So one day I wrote her an email about some funny trip or, some funny thing that my dog did. And it was pretty funny. And she wrote back and she said, maybe you should start writing your own stories.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay. I did not know how to write. So I just started at I think what's it called? The Institute of Children's Literature.
Yeah.
And started learning to write, and I started writing picture books. And then my most recent book was a young adult novel. And come to find out, I love writing. I love art. I love writing, and they seem to take up different parts in my
Yeah.
mind and
Yeah.
my spirit. I don't know. Like, I don't know if you know what I mean,
I
but
do. I do. I paint. This is one of my
oh, do
paintings
you?
back here. And I just
Nice.
I just published my first book in October, so I've been
Mm,
writing for a long time. So I totally get it.
yeah,
It's not quite right left brain, but it's definitely a different way that your synapses fire, you
yeah.
know. So, what was the first thing that you created that you got a response from somebody that validated what you wanted to do, that made you think, I want to continue this feeling. I want these endorphins to rush through me. I want to create things and make people happy. Was there a moment? Was there a period in your life that that happened?
Um, I would say that uh, I really, really struggled with self-confidence, and I still do, to be honest. It's much better than it was, but I would go through these cycles where I'd be like, ah, who am I kidding? I need to quit. I'll
Yeah,
I'll go work at a donut shop. I'd probably make more money.
yeah,
Um, and then something would happen where, like, I remember I was just doing, illustrations for a Baha'i publication. I wasn't getting paid for it, but it was something that I felt strongly about, and it was really fun. And at the same time, I took this cartooning course. And the way that the cartooning course, the assignments that were written, there was some flexibility with how they could be interpreted. Like they gave us the text, and then we were supposed to cartoon it. So I did that, and the response I got, and this is after a number of assignments, the response I got after doing what I thought was just a fantastic cartoon, I'd never done anything like it before. There were, you know, it was really intricate. All the instructor said was, "You didn't do this right. This was not according to the text."
wow.
And I reread the text and I was like, "No, it could have been interpreted this way."
Hmm.
But he discounted all of the work that I'd done. He discounted my view of how it could be done. And so that was like a moment where I was like, okay, I obviously don't know what I'm doing. I'm quitting. So I wrote to the people in the Baha'i magazine, the editors, and I said, I'm quitting. I'm sorry. I can't do anymore. I don't know if you've heard of the Lotus Temple
Yeah.
in India.
Uh-huh.
The man who designed that, he's a Baha'i. He phoned me. He was the editor of this magazine. He phoned me at home and he said, "Don't quit. I know you're discouraged. I know something happened. Don't quit. Keep going."
Wow.
And I was just like, and I've had moments like that where people who probably had lots of better things to do with their time took the time to just see me and encourage me and say, "No, it's okay. You aren't, you're not in the ditch. You are doing fine. Keep going, keep trying." And I've had many, many angels who've been in my life in that way that just kept me trying. And I do to this day. And now as I have been really healing myself and I'm kind of rounding the corner where I'm going to be becoming certified as an energy medicine practitioner. I'm now coaching people with creativity and mental wellness. As I round the corner to this new phase in my life, my goal is to be that kind of encouragement for others who are still really struggling,
Yeah.
still trying to find their way.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Who's been that bedrock, that inspiration, that hero for you in your life for everything that you've accomplished and evolved into up to this point?
I would say my husband.
Yeah.
Um, when we met, I was still really in the throes of PTSD, and I don't know if you know much about PTSD, but it can, I had a temper. I would be like very inflexible if there was a meeting and it somehow got changed, and then they wanted, like our meeting got changed before, that would have been like, ah, ugh,
Yeah.
but now it was like, no, I can be flexible. I'm learning how to be flexible. I'm learning how to have that uh what is it, neuroplasticity of being able to be present, even when things kind of are a little unexpected.
Yeah,
My husband Nav was absolutely key to me being able to trust myself, trust that I could heal, because he saw something in me that kept him with me even when I would be, having a an episode of PTSD.
yeah.
So, and when I would doubt myself as a mother, he'd be like, "No, you're a good mother. You love these children. They know it. You're keep going." Because there'd be days where I'd be like, they'd be better off if I just left, or just leave
Sure.
home and leave no forwarding address. And he'd be like, no, no, they wouldn't. You can't do that. This is just the PTSD talking. And so he'd help me find that equilibrium when I'd be like, all over the place.
But you've had to make that choice to find that equilibrium and find a way to evolve and to heal and to
Absolutely.
continue to create. So what is that every day for you that helps you wake up, helps you create the stories and the images, and to evolve as a human being yourself? What is that collective gas every day for you?
Faith, faith. Even when it was the darkest moments of my life, I always had a sense that there was something else, and that I'll tell you an experience that happened to me. I was in theater school in London, England, way back in the day. And something happened where I was in a position where I was alone in my room, and something had just happened that was very devastating to me. And I was like, okay, this is it. And I'd struggled with suicide ideation. And I was like, all right, I guess this is it. Before I could do anything, I felt arms wrap themselves around me and hold me. There was no one else in the room.
Yeah.
So I've always felt, and I believe that when we go through really difficult things, we're also given the inner strength and the tools to get through them. So for, as an analogy, if we find ourselves in a cage, by PTSD or by mental illness or by whatever it is that we just feel like we can't get beyond it, we look within, we are sincere, we continue trying, and within ourselves, we will find the key to free ourselves from that cage.
So talk to me about your latest book. You kind of mentioned it.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit. Give me an abstract.
So this book is called The Great and the Small, and it is a dystopian fantasy for young adults. Lots of adults have liked it too, though.
Yeah.
And it takes place in a city where a colony of rats, led by a Stalin-like leader, their beloved chairman, has declared war on humanity using the bubonic plague.
Wow.
And a teenage girl named Ananda ends up rescuing the beloved chairman's nephew, a little rat named Finn, from certain death. And that act creates a series of events that neither can foresee, and it changes them. And the book is told in mirroring narratives that reverberate with the effect of buried trauma, and it's informed by historical accounts of the bubonic plague from way back, and also about dictatorship. And it's ultimately a story about continuing to grasp for the light, even when you feel like you're surrounded by darkness,
Yeah.
and what it takes to survive the darkness, both from without, from around you and within. So it's about striving for the light.
Speaking of the light, when you look at your life and you'd mentioned PTSD and things that you've evolved and healed from, do you find that creating stories and art has been kind of the best kind of therapy for you?
Absolutely. Like when this book, The Great and the Small, was first published in 2017, and I had written it in response to a really pivotal experience that I had when I was 10. When we lived in Germany, my parents took us to a concentration camp museum. And I remember seeing the photo museum and just feeling like my mind had been melted
Yeah.
with the level of depravity and evil that humanity is capable of.
Yeah.
That I believe each one of us is capable of if we don't choose, you know, to follow the light.
Yeah.
But at the end of this tour through this horrific, horrific place, there was this nondescript little building at the end, and we walked in, and I remember just feeling like, there's no hope. We're just horrible, evil people. And I remember we walked in, we opened the door, and it was a little chapel. And there was a man facing an altar. He was wearing a black cassock, is it the black robes.
Yeah.
He hears us and he swirls around and he strides to us with his arms wide and this smile of love beaming from his face. And I didn't know it at the time, but I could see energy. And I saw, like, it was as if every atom in the room was like this sun. As he's striding toward us with love, it changed everything.
Yeah.
It destroyed the darkness of the camp. This man's love, the power of love. And come to find out, I didn't know it at the time, but come to find out, he had been a prisoner there. He
Wow.
had he had the numbers tattooed into his arm, and
Wow.
he chose the light.
Yeah.
And so from that moment on, I was like, good, evil. How does a baby, an innocent baby, become a Hitler?
Yeah.
And another baby become a Nelson Mandela? How? And so I wrote the first edition to explore that. But the girl, and that was through the rat colony, through the perspective of Finn, the little nephew of the beloved chairman. And when he's saved by Ananda, this human that he's been taught to hate, he's been taught that every single human being deserves to die. And suddenly there's this girl who saved him, who nurses him secretly back to health. And he learns to love her. And now he's like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And so he has to face, do I go against my uncle that I love? Or do I rebel? Do I choose this new way? But the feedback came back, and unfortunately I had to agree with it, that the girl's narrative lacked kind of legs. It lacked roots.
Yeah.
And then a year ago or so, or a couple years ago, the publisher came back and said, "Do you want to revise this? We are going to reissue this as a second edition." And I was like, "Really? Like, really?" I said, "Yeah." So I added my own backstory of having buried trauma from an early childhood sexual molestation that I had so buried the memory. So I put that backstory into Ananda's story. And suddenly now I had to like weave an existing story and weave a new backstory in through everything so that it was seamless. And the first the first revision that I sent to, like, I had put everything in there, and it was like almost unreadable.
Yeah.
The the publisher read it and said, "You know what? Good writing, well done, good writing. And this is not publishable with us. This is meant for young adults. It's not meant to, you know, send people into a downward spiral of despair."
Yeah.
So, so she said, reel it back. So it was like I had written the whole iceberg, the molestation, and it was like, no, people don't need a PTSD warning before
Yeah.
they read a book.
Yeah.
So I scaled back like 90% of it, and I just left the little tip of the iceberg, and come to find out it was a much stronger story.
Interesting. Yeah.
When you leave space for the reader,
Sure.
it becomes much more powerful.
Absolutely. So I'm curious of all of these things that you've accomplished and evolved into at this point, what are you the proudest of?
Gosh, I think I am the proudest that I am learning to really love myself. I know that sounds corny,
No.
but if you don't love yourself, it means that like all the work that I do, all the writing, the illustrating, it all becomes about seeking validation.
Yeah.
When you love yourself, you write because you love to write.
Yeah.
You draw because it's fun. You paint because you want to see what the painting's going to look like when you're done.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden life becomes easier. You have a cup that's filled that you can now share that overflowing cup with others instead of always feeling like an empty well, needing other people to help fill me up.
Yeah.
So I think nobody heals alone. Nobody does this journey alone. I've had so much help, so much guidance. And I'm really proud to say that I've finally come to a place of stability, of inner calm, of of being able to love myself and also give myself some slack,
Yeah.
to know that no, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to get it right every time. And yeah, I'm still going to lose my temper sometimes, but not as much.
Yeah.
And not the intensity is like dialed way down.
Yeah.
So, it's just more fun now.
Yeah. 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 So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, all of your fans, readers, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I am, again, this is going to sound corny. I am a child of God. I've been put through some stuff that have ultimately benefited me in terms of being able to learn about life, learn about myself, learn about compassion, not only for others, but for myself. And and it's getting pretty interesting, like learning all of the energy medicine and learning about, quantum physics and learning how everything is connected. Like it's so much more interesting and magical than I could have ever envisioned in my darkest moments.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So if anyone wants to pick up the book, they want to look at your previous work, anything going on in your world, where's the best place to go?
Probably if they start at my website, which is www.torreybalsara.com, that would be a great place to start. From there, you would be able to get links to Instagram. I'm on Facebook, and I'm also on YouTube.
Okay. This has been wonderful. Thank you for your story. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful 2025.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me.
Absolutely.